Guten Tag and hello everyone. This is the KIKLOP assembly video. Here we're going to assemble the Eurorack module called KIKLOP, and I'm going to show all the parts and all the steps that are required. Here you see everything you should have gotten if you ordered the kit, so not the fully assembled device. And first of all, I would recommend that you go through all your parts and double check whether the list is complete, and in the documentation you find a list of all the components. I'm just quickly going through the list as well. So there's the main PCB of KIKLOP with all the SMD components already populated, so there's no SMD soldering, just we're going to assemble through-hole components and the PCBs. So number one, the main PCB. Then we have the front panel PCB. Then we have the maze PCB for the light sensor. Then we have a disk capacitor of 100 picofarads. And then we have 3 different LEDs, and it's very important that you don't mix them up. You can't really tell them by looking at them, so they come in some sort, I'm not yet sure how I'm going to mark them, but they will be recognizable in the package. One is the pin diode, which is a special enlarged diode with intrinsic silicon in between the P and the N junction. So it's a photodiode, and we're going to populate it on the maze. And then there's a candle LED. It's one of these LEDs that you get in flickering electronic candles. And then there's a normal LED just as an indicator on the front panel. So just take them out just before soldering so you don't mix them up. They really look identical, at least the pin and the candle. And yeah. It wouldn't work if you take the candle LED, for example, as on the maze. Then next is we have 2 large audio jacks for 1/4 inch cables, audio cables. Then they come with nuts, 2 nuts. Then we have 4 knobs. Then we have a piece of shrink tube for the maze. Then next we have 4 washers for the potentiometers. We have 4 nuts for the potentiometers, and the potentiometers are 1 piece of a B50K. They are labeled here on top. This one is a B50K, and 2 A20K. That's these. And then we have 1 B1M, that's this one. Then the kit also comes with 2 fans. One is a black fan, and the other one is a transparent fan with RGB lights inside. So that was the component list, and we can now start with the assembly. Before doing so, I would recommend the fans. They come with 2 connectors. But we're just going to use the small one. So you can just cut off the large connector, get rid of it, use it for another project. Just cut off the 2 wire with a connector, the 2 wires with a connector. Cut them off short so they don't have a chance to touch each other, and we're fine. So the fans, let's put them aside for now. Let's start with the front panel. There's just one component on the front panel. It's the 3-pin connector. Was it on the list? I think I skipped it on the list. There is the connector fan 3 pins. It's on the list. Maybe I didn't mention it before. Okay, we put the connector for the fan. We put it on the front side, so where the 2 cyclops are, and We put them so that the plastic is on the inside, like it's marked on the PCB. So it's just a through-hole assembly. Put it on, nothing special. So with the first pin in, I'm just aligning it so it sits flush in the front. And now the other two pins. So that was the front panel. We were already done with the front panel. There's just this connector. Now the main PCB. Let's maybe start with the LEDs. So here it's marked on the bottom, there's two LEDs. So the ones you can see that go later on, they go into these two holes here. On the bottom there's a normal LED, on the top there's the candle LED. So let's start with a normal LED. And the LEDs, these 5mm LEDs, they have two features to recognize the pinout. So for the LED, the polarity is important. There's a longer lead which marks the positive terminal, and the shorter lead is the negative terminal. Or you can also look at the head, the rim is cut off on the negative side. So on the flat side, that's the negative terminal. This gives you the orientation. The top connection is the longer one. It's also printed on the circuit board. Long lead plus is on top and the flat head is on the bottom. So let's insert the LED and then bend it over so it sits around right where it's drawn on the PCB. So it sticks out a bit to the over the edge, and then we solder it on. Yeah, so it's nice. Cut off the excess wire. And the next LED is the candle LED, which goes on here. The polarity is just identical, and the long lead goes on top. The long lead is the positive terminal, and the flattened head goes on the bottom. Insert it. Bend it just about right so it sits on the printed LED, the main board, and solder it down. Cut off the excess wire. Now next, we take one of the large audio jacks and it goes on the back side. That's important, don't put it on the front. It would fit, but it wouldn't fit later on the front panel. You can always double check with the front panel, so also for the LEDs, if you want to be sure you're mounting the things on the right side of the PCB. But also from the print on the PCB, you see here's the markings of the jack. So that's where it's printed. That's the side it should sit on. On the back side, we're going to solder it. So I'm doing it's similar here. I start with 1-pin soldering, and then I take it into the hand and press it flush to the PCB so it sits there nicely without a gap. And the rest of the pins. So we don't put the nut yet because it's going to mount the front panel. Next we're going to put on the first potentiometer. They also go on the back, and it's printed which value goes where. Don't mix them up. So the B51, which is this one, the B51 goes on the bottom. Just sit it in here and solder it down. Same story here, I'm trying to make a 90-degree angle, but just tapping the first pin and adjusting the angle. Now here we solder close to the LED, which is fine. Don't touch the LED with a hot iron, but there's a millimeter gap or two. It's no problem. So next one is A20, or both A20s go in the middle. Put it in. It doesn't want to. Okay, the pin is bent a bit. First pin. Align it properly. Next A20. And the last potentiometer is the B1 mag on the top. That's the main board assembled. Now let's assemble the maze, as it's called. Here it's printed maze VO2. I hope we don't need another revision of this tiny PCB. It's clearly printed component side, brackets hide me. That means put the component on the side where component side is printed and solder it. Press it flush and the rest of the pins. And there goes the 100 picofarad capacitor goes there. There's a little spot for a SMD cap, but you know, for a single component SMD assembly is not really worth it. So there's this through-hole SMD through-hole disc capacitor, 100 picofarads. You just put it here in the holes, and so it ends up behind the jack. And here the wires are a little bit long. I'm going to cut them off. And there's this soldering technique invented by Boltport from the UK. So this is a bit nasty and scratchy, and if you really cut them off as short as you can, or very short at least, then you can go through a second round of soldering on them, and you add solder until it's a half sphere. So then it's really a nice and round, nice to the touch solder joint. So you can make them nicer here. Here it's maybe worth on the maze to do it, because this is the part you're going to hold in your hands, and maybe even cut off the little excess of the audio jack, the excess terminals, the pins, and do the same technique here. It's not required, you can skip this step, but if you want to solder it beautifully, if you care about the haptics of your device, then you can do this. It's a nice, very nice trick, because it's a very different touch. Okay, we have nice round shapes all over. Now the last soldering component already is the pin diode. Here it's also marked long and short and flat, same story as before. We have the long terminal on top, the positive lead, and here I would for the shrink tubing to go over it nicely, I would recommend to bend it so it's flush or just a little over the PCB edge here. So they are about the same length, and then you solder the LED. Adjust the angle again. Second pin. Cut off the excess wire and now make the shapes round and nice again. So you can leave it like this if you like. You can also add shrink tubing. The diode itself is not very sensitive to light from the side, but you might find it a nicer assembly. So the shrink tubing should be sufficient for the whole length. Then cut it just off. It goes up to the capacitor. Just cut it off so that the round shape looks out of the shrink tubing, and pull it over. Get some heat gun. People tend to do it with a lighter, but I don't like the technique. I prefer a hot air gun. So, slowly coming to the end, put on the nut. You can also leave it away, but I think it's nicer to hold this in the hand. This is the way you're going to hold it in your hand. The mace in the end, you plug in the cable into the jack, and then you have this sensor walking around in your room finding interesting electronic lights. So let's finalize this. We have to assemble the front panel onto the main board. So this goes first. The first thing is it goes up onto this only mechanically. This is do mount it first mechanically before soldering. There are soldering connections on the bottom and also electrical soldering connections that we need for this front panel connector, but I strongly recommend do not solder first and then tighten them, and you break up potentially the important electrical connections. So better first put the screw, the nut on all the screws. So first the washers on the potentiometers. Then tighten them nicely. I think they are imperial measure and they are not metric, but I live in metric land, so I'm just taking pliers to tighten them really down. Don't scratch the surface. So now it's mechanically stable. There's nothing moving anymore. But still, as a backup, we do the soldering connections, and we need these 3 pins next to the fan connector on the front. We need these electrically to be connected. So this is quite easy to solder them just down here, and you add a little solder here as well. in the middle. And on the top. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm going to test it now. I recommend these knobs that come with it. They go on relatively tight and they come off really hard. It's very difficult to get them off without damaging them. So maybe you want to test it also without the knobs first, and then if everything is fine and you're happy it's working, then you add the knobs. So let's move away the metal plate, not to make any shorts. Let there be light. Okay, it seems to be working. Just that's too much gain. And the low pass filter was singing. Try out the fan. So now we have the fan.